Orbison, you and I have known each other a long, long time.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
And I just want to talk about the thing you and I love, which is music.
Okay.
Because I know that when I look back at the class of '55 and I see that album with you and Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee and Carl Perkins, I graduated in '55. That's when it all started for me. When was your grad time?
54.
Did you make records, Roy, prior to going into the Sun Studios with Sam Phillips, or?
Yes, I did, Red. The first thing I did, which it's not generally known, I had this group in West Texas, and we went to Dallas, Texas in '55, December of '55, and recorded Ooby Dooby. It was supposed to be for Columbia. Yeah. And then I remember it real well because I had my first car wreck going home. I tore up my dad's new Oldsmobile. And so the next thing we heard was this fellow, Papa Hollifield, we call him. He was a local record store owner. He said, you know, Ooby Dooby's coming out by a group called Sid King and the Five Strings on Columbia. So what they'd done is get us to make a demo. So I ran over to Norman Petty's and recorded Ooby Dooby again with Trying to Get to You on the other side. And then Papa Hollifield sent that to Sam Phillips. And Sam heard it, and he said, can you be here in 3 days? So we went to Memphis. I recorded Ooby Dooby again, but this time I was going to do Trying to Get to You, and he said, we can't record that because Elvis recorded that. I sold it all to RCA and promised we wouldn't re-record it, so I had to write a song called Go, Go, Go that became Down the Line on the other side of it. So that was my first recording, but in Dallas, and then in Clovis, New Mexico, and then Memphis.
Roy, an amazing thing happened that you wouldn't see, but as you strolled on to do your show, and I know, you know, all of the nervous things, no matter how long you've been in it, but you never would have heard this. Let me tell you, a couple of journalists said, I'm awestruck with this man. Here walks a living legend, one of the original rock and rollers. How does that make you feel?
Oh, it's great. You know, when I started in the business, I was going to be in it forever anyway, but I did want to make a mark, you know, and it seemed to be, everybody in the business said, well, you know, you never know where the next hit record's coming from or if it will. And so I wanted to kind of at least make a living. And really, that's all I ever really wanted to do was, you know, you kind of hope you'll be a star or something. But I'm delighted that I've been able to make the living and hang in there for so long. It's great.
Roy, were those fascinating days back in the Sun Studios in the mid-'50s?
No, it was a lot of fun. We didn't know that it was going to become historical like it did, instant history almost, but it was a great workshop to go in because you didn't have a lot of help. There were no musicians, and if you didn't have guys in your band, you had no musicians. And so it was sort of, you're on your own. Do it if you've got the goods, you know. If you can make it, well, go ahead. So, but it was limited, but we had a great time because, you know, I'd finish a session or be hanging around. I moved to Memphis into a hotel, me and the guys in the band, and we get through, or we go over to Sun, and Elvis would walk in, and some of the guys come in, we'd start talking and having a good time. Of course, he was, by then, making films and things, and coming in from Los Angeles. But then we'd wind up going, maybe Elvis's house or somebody's house and have a party, you know. And so it was really a lot of fun. We'd go to Sam Phillips' house or Elvis's house. And it wasn't really wild, though. I mean, there's some wild things have happened since then.
That's right.
But at Elvis's, for instance, we'd get, he'd say, somebody get a case of potato chips and a case of Pepsi. And that would be it for the evening. You know, we didn't smoke or drink. And so it was fairly innocent fun, but great fun. A lot of
camaraderie.
Yeah, it was great. Of course, then we'd go on the road, me and Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee and Carl. I would go out with those guys, and Warren Smith and Sonny Burgess and Billy Lee Riley, and all the guys, yeah. So, you know, you just couldn't have that many people on one label unless it was a great thing.
It was magic, it was fun, it was exciting. It really was, when you look at it, and I think you'll agree, a renaissance period for everyone in rock and roll.
Yeah, it was. It was all brand new. See, we were pioneers and all, but we were also caught up in it. It was brand new for us, just like it was everybody else, and really exciting. It was the only music we wanted to make back then and even now, you know. If it wasn't exciting and didn't have energy, well, we didn't want to bother with it.
Roy, there must have been a point in your career, you started out doing things that were really up-tempo hard rockers like Ooby Dooby and Rock House. But was there someone responsible at some time to say, Roy, with that falsetto sound and that range you have, you should be doing ballads? How did that all take place, Roy?
I guess I'm responsible for that. But what happened was I started recording for Fred Foster and Monument Records.
Monument, yeah.
And so I remember driving from Texas to Memphis and then on to Nashville, and I was prepared to fight for strings. I wanted to use strings on the record, and voices and arrangements and stuff, you know, real good things, and real musicians, because I didn't have them at the time. And so I was sitting there ready for the fight, and I said, I want to use strings on this. Fred said, okay. And I said, voices, and he said, okay. And by that time, I said, this is great. So we made a record called Uptown,
right.
And then Only the Lonely, which there is a falsetto in that. But by the time I got to Running Scared, it was just a freedom and a growth, and I was wide open. I could do anything I wanted to, which is great for an artist. You know? An artist loves that kind of thing, you know, especially when you're young and cocky and feel like you know what's going on. So that just came about. In fact, on Running Scared, which was that was the first big ballad, and that's full voice. It was falsetto at the end on the recording. The first 2 or 3 times we ran it through, but Fred then came over the intercom thing, and he embarrassed me. He said, Roy, he said, we're going to lose the record if you don't sing out more on the last note. And I said, well, run it one more time. And so I remember hitting the note, and I didn't know I could hit the note, but I didn't have any formal training, so it didn't bother me, you know. And I hit the note, and everybody kind of looked around, and we had 30 musicians in a room about this size. And so I had to sing over all the people. And so that's really how that came about, and everybody loved it, and it went to #1. And then the next record was Crying, which has the same stuff in it. So it was, I guess Fred could be credited with that, letting me do what I wanted to.
Roy, you know, when you look back on your career, you've always had people in your band or people that you brought along who've, you know, gone on to great fame and fortune on their own. Can you think of some of those?
The first group I had, Bobby Goldsboro was in that, and then the next group was the Candymen, and they turned into the Atlanta Rhythm Section. And in between, even, my drummer was in a group called Buffalo Springfield, and then I toured with a lot of guys, Freddie and the Dreamers before they became big,
But the Beatles were on your program.
and the Beatles before they became super big in America. We were there in '63, the summer of '63, and they broke in '64. And then I toured with the Stones in '65, and Pretty Woman was my big song at the time. The current song, and it impressed the Stones so much. I think their next record was Satisfaction, which sounds, you know, a bit like, but I mean, it was great, altogether different. But
did you expect that adulation in England, though, when you were there? When you arrived first?
No, it's strange. You know, back in the early days, I was sitting with the Everly Brothers, and we were having dinner, and Buddy Holly came in, and he had just gotten back from England. He said, hey, and he was real happy. He said, hey, guys, look at this chart. And he was #1 and #5 in England. He said, it's great. And so then the Everly Brothers took that as an endorsement. And they went over, came back, said, it's terrific. But this was 57, 58, 59. And so I didn't go over till '63. I waited a little longer to make sure, you know. In fact, I wasn't in their caliber at the time, you know.
Roy, back in 1963, you were on a Canadian tour, and you just returned from England, and you told me about a group that was on the show with you as you performed throughout England called the Beatles. And I said to you, Beatles, where'd they get that from? The Crickets? And of course, John Lennon and Paul McCartney later told me that's exactly where they got the name. But what were they like as people, Roy?
We were young and wild and crazy guys. And we had a lot of fun. George and I always tell the story that we were always late for the bus, and it left without us. I couldn't believe that. There we were, you know, one of the Beatles and me, and they left without us, you know. But we'd rent a car and catch up, and then we would have to go to the theater at 4 in the afternoon and stay up till 4 in the morning. We couldn't get in, couldn't get out, and we'd read each other's fan mail in between shows, and had a lot of fun. Then we'd go have dinner afterwards, and it lasted about 6 to 8 weeks, and played poker on the bus, and had a lot of fun. We became very close in just the 6 weeks, and but it was great. It was terrific.
Roy, of all of the material you've recorded on 45s and LPs, of all of those things, and most of them you wrote, which one is Roy Orbison most proud of?
Well, it was amazing to me that say with Running Scared or Crying and songs like that, that what I was doing or saying, how I was expressing myself, everybody liked. That was what was amazing, because I wasn't making hit records to get hit records. I was writing songs, and then I would go in the studio and record those songs as best I could. And of course, I was best qualified to sing those songs because in writing them, it just, it was a continuation, and then go perform them. But it was delightful that they turned out to be standard songs, Crying and Blue Bayou and things like that. And so that was what was amazing, and it still is today, that they're still played and still recorded and still heard. It's great.
Roy, how does it make you feel having artists like Linda Ronstadt do Blue Bayou, Glenn Campbell do Dream Baby, Don McLean do Crying, and Van Halen do Pretty Woman? How does that make you feel having these people perform your artistic works?
As an artist listening, you shouldn't comment, except to say, you're glad they did that. But as a writer, it's wonderful, you can't imagine what a thrill it is for a guy to write a song and then sing it and have hit records, and nobody else touched them for many years. And then all of a sudden they touched them and did them very well. It was great.
Could I also say that when a little envelope arrives with a check for
The
royalties?
check's not bad either.
Roy, on that note, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Continued success and good health.
And to you.